Borderlands is not the easiest game to describe to someone. On the surface, it looks like your standard first-person shooter with an eccentric art style. In reality, it actually combines the first-person gameplay with the loot drop mechanics of action role-playing games like Diablo. Thankfully, this game is more than Diablo with guns. Its imaginative design ends up making it one of the most memorable games of the year.
15 minutes later, I'm still walking down the street when I saw the shadow of a man creep out of sight.
Borderlands has a very striking presentation. A large part of its personality comes from its sharp, stylized visuals. The console version has some frame rate issues in large-scale fights, but otherwise this game looks awesome. Environments are open and detailed, and a lot of love went into the weapon models, and enemies animate very well. I would have liked to see a little more enemy variety, but there's still a lot to take in here. And although the story is nothing to really write home about, the main characters are still brought to life with lively animation, good voiceover work, and some snappy writing.
All right, Baghdad, time to wake up!
Seeing how a lot of recent games forego this aspect entirely, it's definitely nice to see here. As I said before, this is primarily a loot hunting game. Much fanfare has been made about the game's insane number of weapons. We're told anywhere from a few 100,000 to more guns. All we can say is, yes, there are a ridiculous number of guns. You'll find the usual assortment of weapon classes, stuff like shotguns, sniper rifles, or submachine guns, and each will have unique stats to them, anything from reload rates to damage numbers. As a result, you'll constantly equip and re-equip gear as you find better items. While you may have to toss away a lot of trash guns, it's still very gratifying to finally get that one gun that really clicks for you. In addition to the collecting, the game gives you more customization options with its character classes. You can choose between being a hunter, a berserker, a siren, or a soldier, and each class gets a unique action skill that you'll use a lot during the game. As you level, you also earn points that can increase your stats or power up skill trees for your action skill. While you can do a lot with this system, some of the changes are sorta hard to notice. I would have preferred a greater diversity and bigger changes between each skill class. While the skills do affect how you fight, for sure, it seems like more could have been done with it. One good thing is that if you want to change your character completely, you can reset all your points and redistribute them accordingly. The interface for all this is surprisingly accessible. Customization and looting aren't the only parts of this game, though. The shooting is very satisfying, and thanks to some really engaging enemy AI, it doesn't get as repetitive as you might think. The game's also got vehicles, and though they mainly serve as ways to speed up travel, they can also be used to blow things up. However, without a doubt, the best feature of this game is its multiplayer, which is frantic, chaotic, and highly addictive. Although you can do everything by yourself, up to 4 people can take on the adventure cooperatively. As you keep adding players, the enemy will get more powerful, and better loot will drop. All of your items, progress, and experience are then transferred back to your own game, so there's a lot of incentive to play as a group. One limitation is that you all generally have to be at the same part of the game if you want to do the story missions together, so plan accordingly. The game also offers a high degree of replayability. After you beat it, you can actually play it again with all of your items and a fully leveled character, and all of the enemies will power up as well. There's also duels and an arena that's just for some player versus player fun. So if you ever get into an argument over who has the better character, it's a nice little way to figure it out. Gearbox's Borderlands is a slick and satisfying title that may surprise a lot of people. Straight shooting fans may not care for all of the stat building and the looting, but I found it highly engaging and rewarding. So if you're looking for something a little different than the norm and have 3 other friends who want to loot alongside you, you should definitely check this game out. For the full written review, head over to IGN.com.
Far too long since we had a reason to return to the wonderful and deadly world of Pandora. But now it's time with Gearbox's awesome shooter, Borderlands 2. The original hooked me with its great gunplay, constant stream of loot, and generally hilarious writing, but had plenty of room to grow. A few minor complaints aside, developer Gearbox has succeeded in making the sequel an improvement over the first in every way.
Everything must die!
I'm racking my brain trying to think of a name for that diamond pony I bought. I was gonna call it Piss for Brains in honor of you, but that just feels immature. Hey, maybe Butt Stallion? Nah, that's even worse. I'll tell you what, I'll give it some more thought.
The story of the original Borderlands was clearly shoehorned in around the gameplay. It had moments where it came together, sure, but overall it felt flat and forgettable. With Borderlands 2, the studios really upped their game, weaving together all the characters and jumbled plot points of the first game into a story that makes sense. You play as a vault hunter, essentially a badass treasure hunter who's on Pandora to look for vaults. Sadly, Handsome Jack, the game's villain, has other plans, and before you know it, you're wrapped up in a quest to stop Jack from destroying the entire world. The story's a bit cliched, I know, but it serves as an easy-to-understand backdrop for the excellent writing. Borderlands 2 really pushes the witty writing and crude humor that came out in much of the first game's DLC, with quests that introduce you to a number of bizarre and funny characters.
Got a very important tea party coming up, and my date is missing, and I am not going stag! Don't even suggest it!
The main story has the odd moment that even manages to be touching, though this often feels a bit out of place considering the rest is filled to the brim with creative and well-written gutter humor.
Boner farts. That's right, we're calling them boner farts now.
Gearbox has done a better job this time around with making your character feel more like your character. While the options are still really limited, they've added the ability to change the skins on your head and your body. More importantly, they've reworked much of the interface, resulting in a number of improvements to the overall experience. There are subtle things, like the way the menu pulls outside your character, the addition of more options to sort your quests, and an always-on minimap makes Borderlands 2 feel much improved over its predecessor. The sense of place in the world of Pandora has never been stronger either. The lands you explore and the creatures you fight all establish the feeling that you're on a world that feels at once alien and somehow akin to Frontier America. And while you return to a couple environments from the first game, the new, sprawling sections of the world you get to explore are diverse enough not to become boring and pretty enough to occasionally warrant a good look around. Sadly, occasional technical issues did pull me out of the experience, but since they're seemingly random, it's hard to say whether you'll see them on your platform of choice. From parts where objects and enemies got caught in the world, to scenes like this, where the Gunzerker gets trapped in a cycle of death. There's also a tiny bit of texture pop-in that occurs across all platforms. Progressing through the story so you can see those credits roll is a perfectly fine reason to play through Borderlands 2, but for many more people, it's the grind that's the most rewarding. Just like Diablo, randomly generated loot drives the gameplay experience. Each time you gun down an enemy or tear open one of the many chests and containers, there's the chance that a shiny new gun will tumble forth. The best moments come from running up to a freshly discovered weapon, comparing its stats against those of your current loadout, and then equipping it to see how it works. When you strive to get past a really tough quest or boss fight, and you get that one gun that perfectly suits your playstyle, it's just so damn rewarding. Of course, all that killing and looting nets you levels, which you can use in Borderlands 2's revamped skill tree system. Outside of each class's unique ability, the original Borderlands didn't do much with the skill trees to make each branch feel all that different or more viable than the others. This is not the case with 2, where each class's skill tree not only has more skills to put points into, but each branch has good enough powers that you'll feel hard-pressed when choosing where to allocate points. While not all the classes can create super diverse builds, Borderlands 2 definitely manages to make skill trees feel more significant, and to make classes feel much more adaptable to your playstyle. The game's 4 classes all play great too, and who you pick really just comes down to your playstyle. If you want to be super aggressive, you can check out the dual-wielding maniac that is the Gunzerker, or the turret-slinging commando. Those of you who appreciate a bit more subtle approach can play the magic-feeling siren or the ninja-like assassin. They're all worth playing, and after you finish the campaign and then play it again on a New Game Plus, you could always roll a new character for another go. If going through 30 plus hours of shooting and looting alone sounds boring, you can always join up with up to 3 other players in Borderlands 2's seamless co-op. If you join a friend's game, you can complete quests you've already finished, and if you do quests you haven't discovered, you'll always have the option to skip them in your base game. It's really smartly done. Less smart, though, is the fact that the loot is shared between all players, meaning if you're playing with strangers or even gung-ho friends, you'll need to work to get the loot distributed equally. My advice? Pick your partners wisely unless you want to be frustrated. Alone or with friends, Gearbox knows how to make a shooter. The enemies are varied enough to keep engagements interesting, and the shooting controls feel appropriately snappy, making combat something to look forward to. Vehicles are also still present in Borderlands 2, though like the first game, they're still largely underutilized, mostly just serving the purpose of getting you from A to B. Still, the occasional mission that makes use of them makes for a good change of pace. While some things like the visual customization to characters don't go far enough, and there are a few annoying technical issues, Borderlands 2 is a great improvement over its predecessor. The humorous writing will have you laughing, and if you're susceptible to loot addiction, you'll find an ample supply to collect, collate, and pine after. With fantastic shooting and hours of game to play, and then play over and over, Borderlands 2 is a shooter no one should pass on. For more on Borderlands 2, you can go to IGN.
There he is! Open fire!
2 years ago, Borderlands 2 did a great job of fusing loose and fast shooting with surprisingly deep character customization. Borderlands the pre-sequel provides both of those, along with an entertaining story and a handful of successful gameplay additions that spice up its already excellent core of shooting and looting, either with friends or on your own. This is, essentially, more of the Borderlands I love, with just enough new twists to pull me back in, and mostly make up for the things the series still doesn't get right. Make no mistake about it, the real star of this show is Jack. In Borderlands 2, he was perhaps the most gleefully sadistic and effective video game villain since Final Fantasy VI's Kefka. Seeing his journey from hero to maniac is perhaps the biggest reason to make the 20 or so hour trek through the pre-sequel. Writer Anthony Birch shows a real knack for storytelling here, drawing a more sympathetic portrait of Jack without ever making him into that cliched, misunderstood villain. He's every bit as much the hilarious, egocentric asshat here that we remember him as, and his excellently written and delivered dialogue is responsible for the lion's share of the laughs.
Sorry, am I being passive-aggressive? My bad. That must be a symptom of almost dying.
It's a good thing, too, because those laughs were often all there was to carry me through the long stretches of scenic, yet purposeless wandering around on Pandora's moon with barely anything to fight. This is a problem Borderlands has had since the beginning, and the pre-sequel hasn't solved it. The inadequate waypoint system that doesn't save you from going in circles while looking for your next objective, the boring trek back to your quest giver at mission's end, it's all still here. The early hours on the moon were particularly trying, since everything is incredibly spread out and low-gravity jumps take seemingly forever. And I really don't want to go on a multi-step wild switch hunt to trigger a fight once I arrive at the designated location. The pre-sequel is cardinally guilty of this one. Apparently neither Dahl or Hyperion know how to make doors on the moon because almost every single one requires you to throw a breaker somewhere back in the area you just came from before you can proceed. It's the same buck and stall pacing that's plagued the series for years, and it gets harder to forgive with each iteration. But once that switch is thrown, we get down to what Borderlands has always done best. The bullets start flying, the loot starts dropping, and the characters start cracking wise. The pre-sequel delivers a whole lot of that, starting with its 4 new playable characters and their positively nutty skill trees. Many abilities reward very specific playstyles with powerful temporary effects, kind of like mini achievements you unlock over and over. Claptrap is the best example. I happen to be a compulsive reloader with a mild death wish, and he's got a skill tree that seems to have been made just for me. By rapidly reloading, I get a variety of big buffs that have explosive results, but at the cost of some health and accuracy. Just reading some of the other characters' high-level skills made me ask, how does that work? I just had to try them out. The pre-sequel has a few other tricks up its sleeve too, and most of them work out. The new Stingray hovercraft handles like a wet mop with a ceiling fan strapped to it, but the new low-gravity mechanics are a success. Coming to grips with my elongated jumps took a bit, but once it clicked, cool things like this started happening. The new gearing options are a blast too. Freezing enemies solid with cold-based attacks and burning them to a crisp with the new laser class weapons feels great. But just wait until you see some of the mods that come on the Oz kits that keep you breathing in space. Some grant you accuracy and damage bonuses while airborne, while others give you an entirely different set of buffs depending on whether you're in a vacuum or atmosphere. The pre-sequel is really generous with loot too, so you'll have plenty of opportunities to shape your character in interesting ways. Despite its tendency to make you jump through hoops before getting to the good stuff, Borderlands the pre-sequel delivers where I expect it to as a Borderlands fan. The new gear and low-gravity mechanics mixed with the zany skill trees make for a fresh experience, and with Jack at the center driving the story forward, you get a deeper dive into the always entertaining, if well-traveled universe of Borderlands. For more on Borderlands the pre-sequel, keep it locked right here to IGN.
Lower that shit.
Stubbornly refusing to reinvent the formula after a 5-year absence, Borderlands 3 sticks to its guns and manages to outdo itself. Refined movement and shooting, a legion of enjoyably challenging enemies, and the single largest arsenal of mechanically diverse firearms I've ever seen in a video game easily make this the best in a great series of co-op shooters. What's more, this is an adventure I could see myself happily undertaking again from scratch, with a new character and a fresh group of friends.
It's a beautiful day, full of opportunity. So, who's coming?
You'll arrive on the familiar planet of Pandora to find it overrun by bandits and on the verge of total collapse. So, normal. But this time around, you aren't stuck on Pandora. You'll venture to several varied and jaw-droppingly beautiful planets, and each stands out visually in a way the series rarely has before. Every nook and cranny is generously littered with chests, collectibles, and amusing Easter eggs that make exploration almost as fun as combat. The Vault Hunters that you and your team of up to 4 will take control of have had their versatility boosted by a choice between 3 different action skills, selectable at the top of each notably beefed up skill tree. Except for Mose, who gets to customize her mech's loadout. There's a lot of neat details to sort through when it comes to your class's progression, like skill augments and anointed items, and I go into more specifics here in my written review. The cast of supporting characters found in these cosmic backwaters candidly edge out the generic but somewhat amusingly villainous Calypso twins when it comes to delivering a compelling story.
What is up, brothers and sisters? God Queen Tyreen coming to you live. We got something real special for you today.
For instance, interacting with the figureheads of the Atlas, Maliwan, and Jacobs megacorporations provided a wonderful marriage of storytelling and gameplay that gives extra depth to the weaponry you collect.
Despite being a Jacobs, I ain't much with a rifle.
Playing with friends is better than ever thanks to the new ping system. Cheers, Apex, which can be used on enemies, items, or the environment. But the co-op feature that really stands out in 2019 is the ability to share or trade weapons and other gear after you've used them, since they don't bind to your character when equipped. It's also worth noting that your team can choose to play in cooperation mode, which turns on instance loot and forgiving level scaling, or co-opetition mode, which disables scaling and lets the fastest player hoover up all the items like in the old days. Perhaps Borderlands 3's greatest triumph is that it never felt monotonous over more than 30 hours. I kept waiting for the energetic pace at which new enemies, weapon archetypes, and mission structures were introduced to slow to a grind, but it never did. For starters, if your Echo 3 mission log didn't clearly label them as such, I would have had a hard time distinguishing Borderlands 3's side missions from the main story missions. And I absolutely mean that as a compliment. The optional tasks divvied out by the denizens of Pandora and its neighboring planets are creative, enjoyable, and rarely the kind of formulaic, repeatable filler that's usually associated with side fare.
You are the best Vault Hunter. Wow, after me. So you are second best, which is still pretty good.
There are definitely still some fetch and kill quests, but there's almost always a twist that makes them feel unique. And when there's not, Borderlands 3's self-deprecating humor makes light of that situation. My absolute favorite side missions were the ones that completely sidestep convention for a quick laugh. For example, Tyreen Calypso offering up a legendary weapon if you simply kill yourself, and the catch that this decision comes along with had me chuckling for hours after the fact.
Wow, you actually did it! You are a total gun slut.
Borderlands 3's incredibly diverse and constantly surprising arsenal absolutely steals the show. The illusion of infinite firearms is sold much better than ever before thanks to the sheer number of randomized elements with significant and legitimately unique effects. This meaningful weapon variance is further helped along by a greater emphasis on what differentiates each manufacturer. For instance, all Vladoff weapons can switch between 2 firing modes, like a Gatling gun that toggles to a grenade launcher, while Children of the Vault weapons don't need to be reloaded at all, but can overheat. What's most impressive about Borderlands 3's arsenal, though, is how these weapons look and feel. It's the delightful little touches, like cocking the hammer on a revolver, the red-hot smoking barrel of a shotgun, or a bolt chattering away on an assault rifle. These are the types of details I'd expect to see on handcrafted models, not procedurally assembled ones. In the same vein, many weapons feel fantastic with the mouse and keyboard on PC thanks to pronounced recoil and crisp sound design. Then comes the creme de la creme of loot, legendaries. Like in Borderlands 2, these guns and gadgets fill out the upper echelon of the item table with handcrafted effects that are, in many cases, a celebration of how far Borderlands 3 is willing to go to be absurd and surprising. My favorites so far are the Laser Sploder, which spits out rockets and a laser at the same time, the Cloud Kill, which leaves enemies choking on corrosive fumes, and the Hellwalker, which is a dead ringer for the Super Shotgun from Doom. Without giving too much away, you'll square off against plenty of returning enemy types along with several new ones, totaling up to a creative and enjoyably challenging horde. Most critter fights are fun, even though they all feel functionally the same. Meanwhile, bandits and futuristic Maliwan troops do a great job of keeping you on your toes. Their squads get increasingly mechanically diverse as you get deeper into the campaign. Borderlands 3 is at its most hit or miss in the quality of its boss encounters, which, frankly, are all over the place. The good news is that the bulk of them are spectacular. There's the exemplary Agonizer 9000, who comes complete with crit spots, flaming vents to dodge, a massive saw blade to jump over or slide under, and even a second phase, which mixes things up further. And every other boss with major plot significance follows this great formula: precise telegraphs, challenging mechanics, and mostly avoidable damage. At the opposite end of the spectrum is Kilovolt, who covers the entire arena in unavoidable, mostly lethal electricity that can easily down a whole team at once. Worse, his electricity even zaps the smaller enemies that would otherwise give you a chance at reviving yourself with a second wind kill. What a headache. Your adventure doesn't end when the credits roll because Borderlands 3 has an endgame. Most notably, there's a Mayhem mode, which incrementally ups the difficulty and adds random effects to some enemies for greater rewards. After unlocking Mayhem mode, you'll also start earning all new Guardian ranks, which provide further stat increases and cool effects like increased loot luck after scoring a kill. Couple this with True Vault Hunter, aka New Game Plus, the Circle of Slaughter, better known as Horde Mode, and the all-new Proving Grounds, which sort of resemble a non-randomized Diablo 3 Rift, and there are many enjoyable ways to skin the endgame cat. For all of the topics we couldn't fit into the video, like vehicles and duping, be sure to check out the written article on IGN.com. If Borderlands 3 is what happens when a modern looter shooter throws the longevity of its item economy and daily quests to the wind, then you can sign me up for Borderlands 4 right now. The sheer magnitude and diversity of its arsenal of fun and surprising weaponry is unmatched, and the striking amount of loving detail and variety packed into its energetic and replayable 30-hour campaign is what makes Borderlands 3 a high point for the series and the genre as a whole. If you enjoyed the review or have further questions, feel free to shoot me a follow on Twitter at ThugandDuggan. And for all things Borderlands 3, including our favorite guns, Easter eggs, and endgame guides, be sure to keep it right here on IGN.
Shoot thousands of goblins in the face with a flaming crossbow, throw gigantic meteors at gross anthropomorphic mushrooms, and hang out with a queen horse that's literally made out of diamonds. That's Tiny Tina's Wonderlands in a nutshell. And yeah, if it looks like a reskinned Borderlands 3, that's because it is. But that doesn't end up being such a bad thing. The hilarious writing and stellar voice acting performances combine beautifully with the trademarked looter shooter mayhem to create something extremely memorable. This fantasy spin on the Borderlands formula delivers the large-scale adventure I dreamt of playing ever since playing the Borderlands 2 DLC that inspired it. And although it very much plays it safe in a lot of ways, battling through it has been an absolute blast.
Roll for initiative!
Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is a direct follow-up to 2013's Borderlands 2 Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep DLC. As a game within a game, you play through a simulated tabletop role-playing campaign called Bunkers and Badasses, a sort of alternate reality Dungeons & Dragons that replaces generic fantasy tropes with absurdity, gratuitous violence, and tons of guns regardless of whether they're setting appropriate or not. But that's the magic of this larger-than-life looter-shooter RPG, which throws caution to the wind and embraces chaos and nonsense in favor of ludicrous and memorable moments. The best thing about a Borderlands game is I know I'm going to laugh as I loot, and Wonderlands is no exception.
You never know when you need to escape a personal hell.
The excellent laugh-out-loud writing is elevated by one of the strongest comedy casts of any game, with Ashley Birch returning as the lovably obnoxious Tiny Tina, Will Arnett as the main bad guy.
With all this soul energy flowing to me, I can create all sorts of new nightmares.
Andy Samberg as the overeager dumb party member.
Suspiciously normal.
And Wanda Sykes as the rules-obsessed player.
She's ruining my favorite part of killing things, which is that they shut up and stay dead.
Across the board, the voice acting and comedy writing are better than they've ever been in this series. And even without all the action-packed looting and shooting,
Freedom fighters, one and all!
the adventure would be worthwhile just for the memorable characters and hilarious moments.
Those catapults take hundreds of goblin hours to construct. I'm out here creating jobs, you know.
There's a mission where you try to figure out how to remove a character's impenetrable plot armor, another where the characters get way too suspicious about a background character in a blue hat, and another where you straight up kill a bunch of Smurfs. The shenanigans never cease, and fans of tabletop role-playing like myself will find plenty of references and inside jokes that are catnip for veteran dice rollers. That said, even while the tomfoolery is ever amusing, the main story ends up being one of the weaker parts of the package. The fact that the whole adventure takes place within a game being played by Borderlands characters has little to no impact on anything, and that leaves the proceedings feeling pretty frivolous rather than innovative or subversive. It's not quite up to the standards the Borderlands series has set, but man, it's still so dang funny.
It is Queen Buttstack, the most beautifulest, perfectest ruler in all the land.
Of course, most people come to Borderlands expecting a whole heck of a lot of guns to play with, and Wonderlands does not disappoint in that regard. Per usual, you'll find thousands of variations of randomly generated weapons with silly and insane perks, like an automatic crossbow that feels like ye old machine gun, or a shotgun that turns into a fireball you throw at an enemy when it runs out of ammo. The transition from over-the-top science fiction to over-the-top high fantasy has surprisingly changed very little about the way Borderlands feels to play, though there are some notable exceptions, such as grenades being replaced with much more interesting spells, and ultimate abilities shifting to a more magical flair, like summoning giant tornadoes of ice. Other than that, the differences are largely cosmetic changes to combat, so Borderlands fans should feel right at home in the Wonderlands. The similarity to Borderlands 3 is good news in that combat in Wonderlands is generally fantastic, with crazy-looking enemies, challenging boss fights, and so much insanity happening on screen that oftentimes your screen looks like a rainbow puked into a tornado that exploded into 100 smaller tornadoes. The sliding, shooting, and casting in Wonderlands is a seriously good time. The downside of all that chaos is that sometimes it's difficult to know what's even happening, like this insanity. The only other real gripe I have is that it changes so little from Borderlands 3 that even with the setting being completely different, I felt like I'd played it all before in the decade of time I've been enjoying the series already. For example, the Goliath enemies that have been around since Borderlands 2 have the very specific behavior of entering a rampage if you shoot their heads too much. Once enraged, they run around attacking everything, and every time they score a kill, they evolve into a more powerful monster. In Wonderlands, these Cyclops dudes behave almost identically. That's not to say that there aren't any surprises, but the amount of reskinned or reused enemies and ideas definitely made me raise an eyebrow on more than one occasion. Something that's completely new, however, is the charming overworld, where instead of running and gunning in first person, you walk around a map as a cartoonish avatar, exploring the world and finding new activities and side quests to complete. It's easy to navigate, and discovering new areas and unlocking new pathways in this silly board game landscape is a great and inspired way to break up the fast-paced combat and explosions with dumb gags. Like one part where you've got to get past a cheese puff that's been dropped onto the board by the bunker master herself. Unfortunately, it also enables one of my least favorite parts of the Wonderlands package, combat encounters. These are a completely underwhelming new feature that sticks you in a claustrophobically small arena and throws some randomly generated monsters at you until you fill up a murder meter, earn some loot, and move on. You'll run into these bland little battles while exploring the overworld, as filler during part of a side quest, or even in the endgame, which uses it in a horde mode. The main issue I have with combat encounters is that unlike most of the Wonderlands campaign, where you're exploring a large hub world and looking for hidden loot and secrets to discover, these things stick you in a box and essentially put you on a timeout until you've killed enough things. It's unimaginative filler that only succeeds in throwing a wet blanket onto a formula that didn't need slowing down. When you finish the story after around 20 hours and unlock Wonderlands' primary endgame activity, the Chaos Chamber, you'll discover it's basically just a variation on combat encounters. That's a bit of a disappointment, but thankfully it works a bit better as an endgame activity, owing to its high degree of difficulty and roguelike mechanics thrown in to make things more interesting. Not to mention, it's definitely the most rewarding activity from a loot and XP perspective. Speaking of endgame content, Wonderlands has quite a grind available for those looking for more to do. Not only is there a nigh limitless pool of loot to chase, but myth ranks, which allow you to overlevel your character and unlock unique buffs, give you quite a mountain to hike up if you aren't finished smacking people in the face with an enchanted frying pan. I don't think that the Chaos Chamber endgame mode will be enough to keep me grinding for long after the campaign, but with at least 4 pieces of DLC announced by Gearbox already, it's good to know that my leveling and min-maxing won't go to waste if I decide to stick with it. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is a fantastic take on Borderlands' tried-and-true looter-shooter formula. As spin-offs go, it sticks dangerously close to its past successes, which at times felt a bit unoriginal, and some of the new stuff it tries, like procedurally generated combat encounters, didn't pan out terribly well. Where it really distinguishes itself is in the excellent writing, hilarious performances from an all-star cast, and ridiculous combat that continues to shine brightly, making this tabletop-inspired explosion fest absolutely worthwhile.
Prepare to enter a world of fantasy!
For more, check out our reviews of Ghostwire Tokyo and Destiny 2: The Witch Queen. And for everything else, stick with IGN.